Thank you very much, everyone. Buongiorno, guten tag, and I have no idea how to say it in Hungarian. I'm really sorry about it. But I was invited here today to talk about a little thing, a tiny thing, actually a microscopic thing called COVID-19, right? And we're going to subvert it a little bit. And what we're going to talk about is what the fudge do we do now that happened, right? How do we carry on? How do we manage our businesses? What has to change? What has already changed? So that's a little bit of what we have in store for today. I am Bibiana Xausa Bosak, as I was kindly introduced. I'm an anthropologist, a communicator, and a futurist. And I've spent the last 10 years of my life helping the public sector and Fortune 500 companies to manage their strategies and to drive into the future. That's my LinkedIn, if anyone wants, and I'm here today on behalf of MJV Technology and Innovation, where we conducted a very nice study that I'm about to show you. All right, so we have here three things: physics, anthropology, and futures. I would like you guys to take a moment in your minds and see if you can find any common denominators within those three areas: physics, anthropologists, and futures. What do they have in common? We did a little digging and we found one. It's called the observer's effect. The observer's effect in physics states that when observing a phenomena, we can actually interfere in the behaviors of the particles we are observing. And more than that, when we observe one particular behavior, we leave behind a lot of other things that are happening, but we are just not seeing. In anthropology, there is something similar to the observer's effect. They say that even in a non-invasive observation, we change the behaviors of the societies we are observing just by being there. And of course, we all felt this, right? When we are cooking and someone is watching, we suddenly feel different about it and it acts differently, right? So we all know how that feels. I guess particles just feel the same, right? And the interesting thing is that futures feel the same too. So that is our theme of conversation for today. Futures are mutant. When observing possible future scenarios, we can choose to affect them positively by acting on the present. And the most important thing is we are always changing the future, consciously or unconsciously. So I guess we better do it consciously, right? Take a moment in your minds, and this I would love to hear from you. Unfortunately, I cannot. I would like you guys to tell me if you recognize the picture on the background. Yes, that is a picture. I hope some of you do recognize that is Carl Sagan's picture, or better, the Voyager picture of the pale blue dot, our home. And we're going to talk about this home of ours, the present of it and the future of our pale blue dot, and how it went upside down in 2020. This is called the new normal under construction. That is the research that we conducted at MJV. It was real time. We started the research on the first day of lockdown, 1st of March, and it's still ongoing as behaviors change. So on the link there, on the QR code, you can download the entire research. But let's dive into it. We all know how it started, right? A virus emerges in a corner of the world. Suddenly, all humans are on lockdown. That tells us way more about the humans and their behaviors than it tells us about the virus. In 2020, we were obliged to review our behaviors. And that is what launched what many are calling the new normal era. The thing is, we were blindsided by this. We were blindsided because we failed to listen. We failed to prepare. In 2015, Bill Gates went on a TED stage to say that we were not ready for a pandemic. And we can say that's theater, right? But there are scientific papers from 2008 saying that a stream of SARS or COVID was likely to appear in a humid area with close contact between animals and humans, such as China. Any infectologist would say that this is no surprise. So what it is surprising here, or not so much, is that we are terrible at listening and we are terrible at preparing. And how do we do that? How, looking forward, we learn from it? They're calling it a black elephant, which is a combination of Nassim Taleb's Black Swan of unpredictable events and the proverbial elephant in the room. We cannot ignore the figurative swans or the elephants anymore, and we cannot ignore the real threats that we have ahead of us. So how do we do that? We don't know what's the next pandemic is going to be like, or we don't know what's going to be the disruptive effects of climate change. How can we not be caught so off guard again? That is my question, and I would say that is more than this. It's a bit of my mission to try and understand culture, society, economics, behavior, technology, in order for us to be able to be a little bit more prepared. So here the future comes, and we have choices, right? So it's the first time in a long, long time that we stop to think about it. It's the first time that we as a global community collectively stop to think about our futures. We just had an election, and I don't know if you guys followed it, but I'm not American, and I followed as if it was the end of a championship, right? The World Cup or something. And many, for both sides, regardless of politics, the world watched us because we were watching the future unveil there. And that was important because now we are aware of the future as a society, as we've never been, or as we haven't been in a long time. So good, let's start with the past, a very near past, 2020. Let's understand what are the changes that happened once COVID-19 struck. First, macro territory, as we call it, to be affected was health, of course. Once health became a major issue, a public issue, two other territories were immediately impacted. That was work, where the ones who had the chance to work from home went, and the ones who had not, well, what did they do? We still don't know. And education, because kids that had parents with means and parents without means to have them at home all day were thrown into the homeschooling experience for the year. That will have long-term effects on a generation of kids. More than that, it had an impact on mothers. I don't know if any of you is a mother there, but I can attest that mothers are exhausted. And it impacted the whole society as we had to adapt to this new reality. That brought the major macro territory of discussion and of interest to many, which is behavior. What behaviors changed because of that? This is the first pandemic that we see in the age of information. So what kept us together, we humans, we are a social species We thrive because of our connections. And what kept a line, a thread of reality, of normality, was the internet. And I know I'm talking to the telecommunication guys and girls, and I know that you may have been responsible for many of us feeling a little bit less lost. And that's amazing. The power of communication was amazing. But that was a game changer, right? So that impacted hugely on technology and infrastructure and macroeconomics. We can see that from the Financial Times report of the companies that had most profit or gain in the financial market in the first semester. 70% are technology providers. So we see how it really impacted on digital transformation. Once we saw that, and we saw that some things weren't working, right? Like the profit for the profit, or hospitals not being available for everyone, people started questioning. And then new values started to emerge, or discussions that were being held at a lower pace came out as urgent. That brings changes in politics and governments, and that in itself affects education and health and macroeconomics and behavior. So you see, we have a feedback loop, and this feedback loop was made itself self-evident during this pandemics. Cool, right? But that is past. I'm telling you history. You all lived through that. You want to know about the future. You want to know how to deal with your companies, right? So on to the future we go. And then I ask you to think in your minds, what are the currencies of future? When we deal in futures, just like this character from a sci-fi series, when we deal in futures, what are the currencies that we are dealing with? I would love to hear the answers. Unfortunately, it's a one-way conversation here, which is very weird. But I'll tell you, what are the main currencies for us? Signals of change, which are marginal behaviors that are still not adopted by the majority of people, but are indicating some change, and uncertainties. Uncertainties that can lead either to one way or the other. I guess from the 3rd of November till now, we all understood the meaning of uncertainty by the American elections. It was pretty clear there that there was one way to go or other way to go. And depending of what the American people chose, that uncertainty would lead to one kind of future or the other. Well, those two things, drivers of change and uncertainties, are the things that lead us to our drivers of change. Drivers of change are qualitative research and qualitative measurements that we create to understand where the future is going. We analyze all the signals that we see, and then we map and we cluster them into things that we can name. And once you name a thing, it's easier to understand and we can track it. So let me introduce you to our 10 drivers of change, or the 10 paths for the futures. One important thing here is that our drivers of change realize something quite important. That is the fact that this pandemic made like a path of going from me to we. So the first 5 drivers relate to individual behaviors that, when adopted by millions or billions, radically change the landscape. The last 5 are global forces that have structural impact on how we go about our lives. Together, the 10 drivers of change go from the microscopic to the telescopic view. They go from the individual to the collective, from the niched to the structural. They start in the story of me, but they end in the story of we. That's what I want to tell you today. Our first driver of change is called the collective human body and health, or how society, especially in the West, moved from an individual view of health to a collective one. Now, each and everyone's health is a collective responsibility. That is a major shift. The second one is called the life inside. As our houses became our everything place, you guys can see that I'm talking from my living room. I'm actually wearing my pajamas, but it makes a nice blouse, so shh. Our houses became our everything, right? Our workplace, our place of stress, our place of rest, our gym, our restaurant, and we had to adapt just about everything to live inside those walls. These adaptations work like a matryoshka, a Russian doll, where you start with the outside, so the furniture, right? Or how you cook, or how you deal with your friends. It goes on to your routines, and it ends up in more philosophical questions, such as, what kind of life do I want to live? This is no minor driver. 40% of all the 100 companies that had the biggest increase in the Financial Times report are related to this driver. Home Depot is one of the companies that had the biggest revenue. Amazon had a 70% increase in their home appliance and home exercise sales. IKEA is opening 100 more stores. So from that, this has shaped the way to know that this will diminish in importance. The third one is called virtual intelligence, digital intimacy, and the loss of serendipity. As I said, we humans are social species. We thrive in society. And when that has been restrained for us, our new social possibilities, we desperately needed to find new ways of staying connected on a personal level as well as a professional level. And here we are. No better example than how we had to adapt than this event. I never thought I would be doing a talk to such a great audience from my living room. Like, so far, I hope the chairs enjoy what I'm saying, because I cannot see you or hear you or get any feedback from you. And this is our new reality, and we need to adapt and find ways to create. Our fourth driver of change is called Digital is Borderless. The team that's organizing the event is in Italy. I'm in Luxembourg. The guys that are making it all possible behind the stage are in Hungary, and we have people in Brazil. Some of you are in Germany, and I bet some places else. So digital is truly borderless. That's what we learned. But services to these new digital needs. How will the legislation adapt for the needs of people working from everywhere? The question here is not if digital is borderless. The question here is, are we borderless? Are we digitally prepared and transformed enough to be borderless? And then we get to individualization at scale, which has everything to do with digital is borderless. The internet is the land of customization, the land of for yours only and in your own unique way. The one-size-fits-all model is long gone, and businesses will have to find a way to offer personalized experiences in a global scale. That is the challenge of today. If you ask me, but what is long-term and what is short-term? This is the #1 challenge of today, not tomorrow. How to digitalize business, to go through a profound digital transformation and offer individualization at scale. Here, we pass the middle and we start to see a different reality. Here are the drivers of the we arena. They say, or better, COVID brought to surface many hidden social inequalities, such as the right to work from home or the gap in digital access. We call it the Titanic syndrome because, especially at the beginning, many said, oh, but we are all in the same boat with this pandemic, right? It wasn't even a pandemic at the time. This virus thing, we're all in the same boat. Well, the only way we are in the same boat is if that boat is Titanic, because some are safe in our safety boats. We are all safe in our safety boats. Some are playing the violin, completely neglecting the fact that it's happening. And unfortunately, the majority of us humans are still on the third deck, drowning or freezing in water. We need to acknowledge that from a society perspective as well as a business one, because corporations will need to adjust their portfolios to this new highlighted inequality. We will have more inequality, we will have more poor people, and portfolios will have to address that. On the other hand, how do we as a society deal with it? That's our mission. That's our mission as individuals, as humans. How do we deal with that? How do we reduce that? 7, trust crisis and intoxication. Those are no new ones, but they became much worse with the pandemic, right? So trust crisis relates to a crisis in trust of institutions, governments, legislators, corporations. People were distrustful already. Then we saw the disinformation that came with COVID, together with the disinformation that we saw on politics, and that became intoxication. That's not something we invented, that's something that Edgar Morin and Michel Maffezoli invented a while ago. And the World Health Organization already sees intoxication by access of information as one of the main causes of burnout. And burnout in companies is one of the main causes of depression, and depression is one of the highest lethal diseases in the world. So we do need to address that. We do need to think about what we call a diet of information. We do need to think about info ethics. We do need to address that as a society, right? And then there's the 8th driver, which is called the world in suspension. I guess that many might feel that the world is a little less suspended after the election, just because it gave hope to some, it gave frustration to others, but at least we know where it's going, right? We know where what they're inclined to do. The thing is, this moment that we are living here in Europe, for example, with the second wave, is a moment of suspension, is a moment of uncertainty, and we stand at a state of suspension where life is neither paused nor yet normal, as if it could go back to normal, right? So we as individuals and companies and societies and countries, we feel at loss. And knowing that the end of it all, not knowing that the end of it all just causes all of our cortisol levels to go up. So everyone is stressed out and no one even knows why, or we cannot put a finger on it. We are stressed out as a society or as Harvard Business Review pointed out, we are feeling grief in a way that we haven't maybe since the Second World War. And that is a feeling that we will have to endure. We will have to learn how to live with this uncertainty in an extent that we had never before. Luckily, and I'm starting here to go on the high note, is that we are reinventing some values and we are reinventing money. So one thing that starts to make itself clear is that our old values no longer guide the new challenges we face. So from ESGs to SDGs, the world is resetting. And that starts with our mindsets. That is an important message that we want to give it for you today. Last but not least, the future is urgent. After all, we learned one thing from COVID-19, this teeny tiny virus that had such a massive impact. What we learned is that the future is urgent and we cannot leave it for tomorrow to think about it or to act upon it or to start building it. It's up to us today, and I do hope that you guys leave our conversation here today with that in mind. This is where us, humans, conscious inhabitants of this pale blue dot, have a role to play. The time to act is now. What choices will you make? What choices will we make? After all, every aspect of how we live our lives and how society works is now up for debate. I thank you very much. Grazie, danke, viel danke. And I open now for questions, and there is a poll to see if you guys are paying attention. No, I would just want to start a conversation here. I hope you enjoyed. So our first question is, what drivers of change had the biggest impact on your personal or professional life? We would love to hear from you guys, and it's not like you need to remember them all and like have a list. Just tell us your experience here, all right? All right, I can talk about something. They said I've been talking for the last half hour. I would love to hear more from you guys. Also, we will have a Q&A. Oh, there we go. We have a Q&A already. So we have, how can companies accelerate their digital transformation? How does individualization at scale impact everyday businesses? And about the driver, the future is urgent. What should companies be doing to face COVID-19 generated challenges? Let's start by the bottom. To have a kid, I would like someone to explore on that. So about the future is urgent. What should companies be doing to face COVID-generated challenges? There is a big change on what we call ESGs. ESGs stand for environmental, social, and governance. And we've been seeing examples of that. It is the new hot trending topic of the financial market. And what we are seeing is that companies have to oblige now to more strict or more preservative and regenerative aspects. So environmentally being more active, socially being more active, and in terms of governance, companies are having to change their governance to address those issues. One example that we can bring is Twitter just put Malala in their board. And then many questioned the CEO of Twitter for doing that, because what the hell does Malala know about business? And he said nothing, and that's not a problem, because she's not here to do the business side of things. She's here because she's one of the voices that represent society, and we want her opinion in our decision-making process. So there's a big change. It's a big change on where profit is no longer enough. It's the triple bottom line of people, environment, and business. They call it 3 Ps. So it's people, planet, and profit. That is how business should be done. To accelerate digital transformation, then, well, that has to come from the top. So it is a top-down decision in that case, but it is bottom-up in adoption. So what we've been doing as a consultancy company is we've been hired by many to help in changing culture, because that's change management, really. We need to change culture. It's more about than tools. It's about how we interact with these new tools and how we interact with this new reality. So it is really a process of change, of cultural change in the organizations. And it's betterly done with external help. We do know some companies that are amazing at doing by themselves, but it's not the rule. Then can we go back to the questions? How does individualization at scale impact in everyday business? Well, it impacts in every way. One example that we can give is Amazon, for example. We've been buying from Amazon, right? Maybe all of us. And Amazon has the one-click buy with one click. And then you buy it, you put it all, they have all your details, it's in your house, the end. Or you can fill it up every time. That is giving the customer or the client the option of choosing how he wants to make his purchase. And that is what we need to do. As our services and our businesses go digital, we need to provide options for the customers to do their own way. Wait, questions again, please. How to motivate colleagues to change and follow digitalization in the age above 50? Well, I guess the best way would be to show the wonders of Skype or FaceTime with the family, or to like slowly do it, and just as we all learn, because this wasn't a learning curve for just the elderly. This was a learning curve for everyone. We and the guys behind the stage, we've stayed hours trying to sort out the microphone and the things. So we are all learning. We were not prepared. That's the thing. We weren't prepared for a digital world. And now all have to go. So, I mean, they will have to. Oh, if they're over 50 or not, they will have to, or they are going to lose relationships. They're going to lose their intimacy in this time, and that hurts. That's loneliness. So that hurts a lot. There are companies though that are doing, like, people that used to work in retail or bankings that closed their agencies, they redirected their personnel to go and help elderly people use mobile devices. That is something that's amazing. So if we can have training programs on digital transformation for the elderly, clients as well as collaborators, that is something amazing. Let's see. What creative ideas would you suggest to develop customer relationship in the current pandemic situation? Great question. We do have a longer presentation than this with some examples, but digital intimacy is what matters the most. And the examples that we use are, there is this hit singer in Brazil, and differently from other people that were doing live concerts with production, she did one just like what I'm doing. She was in her living room on her pajamas. It looked more like a pajamas than my one. And she did it from her place. Her husband pretended to be doing the dishes, and that created a sense of intimacy. Then we have the example of Fortnite and Travis Scott, who did the first live show on Fortnite. And Fortnite is a game for kids aged 9 to 12, 14, whatever. He created the first show, and with that, he changed the platform from just a game platform to an entertainment platform, bringing a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise use Fortnite, to the point where Fortnite realized that they were strong enough and they went against Apple, because Apple, you download it on your phone, right? So every payment on game used on Apple cell phones goes, a piece of it goes to Apple. They control the payment method. And Fortnite said, no more, I don't want to do this. Apple shut down Fortnite downloads for Fortnite downloads. What happened? Next day on eBay, we had older models of iPhones with Fortnite installed, sold for $17,000. So that is how a revolution is made. That's the kind of thing that we say, create intimacy, create a dialogue. Michelle Obama is another example. She created a podcast from her living room, only with people that she considers close. She is evidently very close to Barack Obama, but in her podcast, they talked about their family life, their values, and that's what she's doing with everyone. So in this age of information and social distance, or physical distance, but social proximity, we need to create digital intimacy. How can companies accelerate digital transformation? I think I've said that it has to be top down and it has to be bottom up in adoption. It's a cultural change, it's a cultural program change. And what are the impacts on corporate culture and governance regarding digital and borderless? A lot. What we saw in the first wave was kind of like a panic of everyone trying to understand their routines. And here a lot of agile methodology helps. We've been doing a lot of consultancies in that, applying agile methodology to the digital world, because if you do not have the routines, if you lose the contact, things kind of go away. So you do need to have more structured routines to keep the contact going, since we do no longer have the corridors or the elevators or things like that. And the other thing is trust. Companies that trust their employees and that have an open conversation tend to have more success. If we create an environment of distrust and of having to report and what you're doing, that will not help. So autonomy and trust are the two things that we are being challenged with in this remote environment, corporate environment. There was one more question there. I don't know how we are in time. Okay. All right, so is that goodbye? Thank you very much to everyone, and I hope you enjoyed. Sadly don't know who you are or your faces, but I hope you enjoyed. And let's think together what we can do today for tomorrow. Bye-bye.